The unfinished business of freedom. Nigeria's economic story. Have you ever heard a riddle that just doesn't make sense? Here's one for you. What is the biggest economy in Africa? One of the world's top oil producers, a nation of 200 million brilliant, hustling people that also has one of the highest poverty rates on earth. The answer, Nigeria. It's a paradox, right? A country with so much wealth and yet so much struggle. For decades, the easy answer you'd hear is one word: corruption. And yes, of course, that's a huge piece of the puzzle. But if I told you that's not the start of the story, what if corruption is just a symptom of a much deeper, older problem? To really understand Nigeria, you have to pull back the curtain on the parades and the independence celebrations of 1960. You have to look at the economic system that was left behind. A system that was never designed for Nigeria to be rich, but for others to get rich from Nigeria. This is not just a history lesson. This is a story of a heist. A heist that started over a century ago and in many ways still going on. In case you don't know what a heist is, robbery, serious one, well planned. Okay? All right, let's rewind. Before oil, before independence, there was the British Empire. Now, the British didn't show up in Nigeria to build a nation. They were there to run a business. And the business model was simple: extraction. Think of it like this. They looked at Nigeria's vast and fertile land and didn't see a food basket for Nigerians. They saw a giant farm for British factories. So the entire economy was rewired. Forget growing yams and cassava for local markets. The new game was cash crops: palm oil for soap, groundnuts for oil, cocoa for chocolate. Between the early 1900s and the late 1920s, groundnut exports exploded by over 22,000%. It was a boom. But for who? All this stuff was loaded onto ships, sent to Britain, processed in factories, and then sold back to Nigerians as finished products, finished goods at a higher price. Raw materials flow out, expensive products flow in. A simple, brilliant, and deeply unfair system. The historian Walter Rodney had a great name for it. He called it colonialism, a one-armed bandit. It only takes, it never gives back. Even the infrastructure they built, the railways, the ports, it all tells the story. The train lines didn't connect Nigerian cities to each other to boost internal trade. No, they ran from the resource-rich interiors straight to the coast, like a conveyor belt to the sea. Get the goods out as fast as possible. So, when Nigeria finally waved the British flag goodbye on October 1st, 1960, it was a moment of incredible joy and hope. Political freedom at last, but the economic software the British had installed, it was still running. Nigeria was politically free, but its economy was still chained to its old purpose: export raw stuff, import finished stuff. And then they struck oil. In 1956, at a place called Oloibiri, Shell BP found black gold, and by the 1970s, with global prices soaring, Nigeria hit a jackpot. This was it. The money to build a new nation, the money to finally break the chains. But here's the twist: the chains just changed their shape. The deals to get that oil out of the ground were signed with massive multinational corporations like Shell. And these early agreements were, let's just say, incredibly one-sided. Nigeria didn't have the technology or the expertise to drill the oil itself. So the foreign companies ran the show. They controlled the tech, the operations, and access to global markets. Nigeria became what economists call a rentier state. Basically, a landlord, it owns the land, and the oil companies paid rent to drill on it. It was a ton of money, sure, but it's not the same as building your own industries, your own businesses. You're just chasing a check from a tenant, a very, very powerful tenant. This fire hose of oil money had a bizarre effect on the rest of the economy. It's a phenomenon called Dutch disease. Here's how it works: the oil money floods in, making national currency stronger. That sounds right, right? But it makes everything else you produce, like farm goods or textiles, suddenly more expensive for other countries to buy. Your exports die at the same time. It's suddenly cheaper to just import everything. Why bother making your own shoes when you can buy them from abroad for less? The result? The agricultural sector, once the backbone of the economy, collapsed. Nigeria, a country that should be feeding half of Africa, started spending billions importing food. The dream of building a manufacturing base is stalled. Everything was about oil. And then in the 1980s, the party came to a screeching halt. The global price of oil crashed. The fire hose of money slowed to a trickle. But the government spending, the reliance on imports, that didn't stop. Nigeria was suddenly massively in debt. And that's when two new characters walk into the stage: the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, the IMF and the World Bank. They came with a lifeline, loans to keep the country afloat. But this lifeline came with a price, a very, very high price. It was called the Structural Adjustment Program, or SAP. The deal was basically this: we'll give you the money, but you have to completely overhaul your economy our way. And their way was a shock therapy: devalue your currency overnight. The naira lost 2/3 of its value, making the price of everything imported skyrocket. Cut government spending, which meant less money for hospitals, for schools, for roads, remove subsidies. The price of fuel and food shot up, leading to massive protests. And privatize. Sell your state-owned companies, from banks to oil marketing firms. Whether these policies were right or wrong is still debated. But one thing is undeniable: it was a massive loss of economic sovereignty. Sovereignty means you get control of your thing. Now you, there'll be anybody to help you control it from outside. Key decisions about Nigeria's economy were no longer being made in Lagos or Abuja. They were being made in Washington, D.C. The old colonial control was gone, but a new, more subtle system was in its place: a system of death and dependency, neo-colonialism. It brings us back to the word corruption. So you have a system where the only thing that matters is all money, a system where agriculture and industry have been sidelined, a system where political power isn't about building a productive economy. It's about controlling the distribution of that oil rent. What do you think happens? Politics becomes a violent zero-sum fight to get your hands on the tap. The colonial rulers had already weakened traditional systems of accountability, making leaders answerable to them, not their own people. The oil economy put them on steroids. Corruption isn't some unique Nigerian flaw. Merely us corrupt now. It's the logical outcome of a warped economic structure. It's the symptom, not the disease. The disease is a system that was designed for extraction, not development. And the human cost has been staggering. Between 1965 and 2000, Nigeria earned an estimated $350 billion from oil. And in that same period, the number of people living in extreme poverty went from 19 million to 90 million. Think about that. All that wealth pulled from the ground, and the country got poorer. Is the story over? Is Nigeria just cursed? Not at all, because this wasn't inevitable. Look at a country like Malaysia. Back in the 1960s, they looked a lot like Nigeria, a former British colony, dependent on exporting raw materials like rubber and tin. They used their resource wealth to aggressively build up their manufacturing sector. They had a plan. Today, Malaysia's manufacturing export value per person is over $7,000. Nigeria is just $160. It shows that a different path is possible. The story of Nigeria is a story of a nation with limitless potential, fighting against an economic structure it inherited. It's a story of winning political freedom, but still fighting for economic freedom. Breaking these inherited chains isn't easy. It means diversifying away from oil. It means building real industries. It means renegotiating the terms with the global powers that have benefited from this system for too long. It means finally finishing the business of independence. To not just own your flag, but to truly own your future. Did you enjoy this story? I have many more on YouTube at Popcentral TV. And check our article, Instagram carousel for a fast breakdown. Go deeper with our interactive web analysis or download full research PDFs at popcentraltv.com. I'm Olayinka. We'll be bringing you Newsense every day on Popcentral TV, DStv 189. Follow us everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, X. Ask me to explain anything, pretty much anything. Stay sharp.
Just so you know, this is for information only and not advice. Some details or policies might have changed by the time you're watching this.